Y'all, this story just keeps getting crazier and crazier. I feel like I'm diving into a tunnel of weirdness. Okay, so we have more news in terms of the Beau DeMayo situation. So I just wanted to update you. Yesterday, there was an article that was put up by Entertainment Weekly. Entertainment Weekly basically talked to Brad Winderbaum, who is the head of streaming, television, and animation at Marvel Studios. And Brad Winderbaum had some things to say about the parting of ways. He actually called it that they parted ways. He said he wouldn't classify it as a firing, which is interesting. He said he can't talk about the details, but I can say that Beau had real respect and passion for these characters and wrote what I think are excellent scripts that really the rest of the team were able to draw inspiration from to build this amazing show that's on screen. He also goes on to say that he's basically super excited for seasons 1 and 2, can't wait for fans to see it, and that they're basically looking for someone to spearhead kind of season 3 and carry on the show. After this, they're going to be looking for a new showrunner and creator, and he says, you know, it's it's not going to be easy, but at the same time, it should be pretty easy because, like, obviously, there are a lot of amazing writers that love X-Men, which, I would say is true. So that's kind of what he says. So it's obviously important to keep in mind that Brad Winderbaum is an exec at Marvel and is the head of streaming, television, and animation, which means that he's probably going to say something that's a little bit more diplomatic. He's not going to give us he's not going to spill the tea and be like, he was the worst, he was super abusive, or anything like that. It just wouldn't be, it's not very diplomatic, especially considering that when it comes to this whole scenario, Marvel has not put out an official statement. Disney has not put out an official statement. Beau DeMayo has not put out an official statement. So, you know, keep in mind the position of this person that's saying this, but he doesn't say anything bad. He does just say, and he does also talk about the work. That's also important to consider here. He talks about Beau DeMayo's work, not Beau DeMayo himself. Also very telling, I think. He doesn't say Beau DeMayo was amazing to work with. He says Beau DeMayo did great work. So that is telling. And if you're wondering who Brad Winderbaum is, other than, you know, the position that I just said, if you've also seen the Marvel's animation X-Men 97 A New Age sort of a promotional video that they put up, that has Brad Winderbaum in it. He's the one talking in it. He's obviously super high up and is going to say, I think, something that he can say. But it is also interesting that he said that we parted ways and he wouldn't classify it as a firing. That implies to me that maybe it was something from both sides. Maybe there was a clash and something happened. I think it's got to be something happened that was very personal to the production. I'm not sure if it's something criminal or anything like that, but I think it could be something that was more personal to stuff behind the scenes. Maybe some intense creative clashes. That's my take on this. So that's kind of what's happening with this report. And I thought that was very important because we're actually getting at least something from someone who is super Marvel affiliated. So there's that. There was also a report that has come out that is from Jeff Sneider. I believe that's how I say his name. I apologize, Jeff, if I didn't say your name correctly. He has his own reporting. It's like a subscriber site where people can pay to see his articles, I believe, and his newsletters, and it's called the InSneider. Very smart. And he is reputable in the sense that he has been with tons of reputable publications and written for them. Right now he's with LA Magazine, but he's also written for Variety, Collider, a ton of reputable sites. So what he had to say, he was on a podcast with John Rocha, which also, I hope I'm saying that name correctly, which is called The Hot Mic, and they basically talk about sort of nerd news and news in general in terms of like movies and films and things like that. And one of the bulletin points that they had, which was also a question, a super chat that they got during their stream, was about Beau DeMayo and the firing and sort of did they have any inside knowledge or anything to say about that. And Jeff said he does have some things to say about that, which he was going to put out in his newsletter. So obviously he didn't want to say too much. Like he's not going to give any direct quotes because that's behind a paywall. I even thought about paying for it just to see what he said. But then I thought, I mean, even if I did look at it, I can't really repeat it because it's behind a paywall and that would just be like wrong of me because obviously that's, you know, part of how Jeff makes his living. So I wouldn't do that myself. We should respect people's paywalls. Content behind paywalls is how content creators can make content for people. Basically, what he said that he summarized is he said that he heard that he was extremely difficult to work with and that basically people didn't like his OF, that his OnlyFans was an issue in terms of just Marvel execs thinking it was creepy is what people have said, and that he was extremely difficult to work with, and that's why he was let go. Keep in mind that this podcast has about a 50-50 success rate in terms of leaks and claims that they've made that are accurate. So it's also important to take this with a grain of salt, because while sometimes they are reliable, sometimes they're not as reliable. So him and John were talking about this issue based on their sort of inside sources. So I think Jeff has said this before, and John was talking about, like, they have inside sources. They're tapped into the communities, I think, in LA, and that's kind of how they get their information. So it's not really about someone giving them like a scoop in the sense of, like, they're not talking directly to like Marvel or Disney. They are talking to people that are in the communities that could have worked with or maybe around this person and getting their insight on it. John specifically said he doesn't have any evidence, but he's just heard from people that this was an issue, which also makes me a little bit wary. And I think John was saying it's related to maybe a big behind the scenes event, which is kind of the theory that I have around it. So we are kind of synced up there. I really am not sure if the OnlyFans played a role at all, just because it's been around for a long time. I mean, sure, maybe some executives found it creepy. I mean, it doesn't sound like it was creepy based on what I've heard of it, but I also haven't seen it. So I don't know. I would just say take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but that is what they reported on it, on the podcast, which you can go check out. It is on YouTube if you want to go watch that yourself. I think in general, it is really important, and I really want to send this point home of when you are looking at rumors and speculative reporting, which is what a lot of this is at this time, because we don't have a lot. It is important that we consider that everyone's going to have an angle, right? So I think the important thing is just to be informed and consider where everyone's coming from when they're talking about stuff and what their biases or their role is that could relate to what they're saying and why they're saying it, right? And I mean, that goes for me as well. Like, I'm not saying, you know, do this with everyone because everyone's shady. I'm saying do this with everyone because everyone is a human being, and there is a lot to human beings that makes us up. And also for me, I mean, obviously I have my own feelings and biases as well. So I try to keep those in mind, and I will try to be clear with you when I have a bias on something to just acknowledge it and try to remove myself somewhat from my biases so I can report to you as neutral as possible. But the fact is, I'm a human with lived experiences, and those are going to inform my thoughts and feelings on an issue, which, you know, obviously I think affects my thoughts on the OF and just, you know, the whole queer angle. And I just want to shout out Javier Morel 2153 in the comments. We had like a really like in-depth conversation about just sort of in terms of the reporting and things that we had heard on DeMayo and, you know, the controversy of the sexuality and all of these things. And also just talking about some of the things people had said about them. And Matt D'Ambrosio, who I talked about in my first video, who also sort of clapped back at Beau DeMayo, seemingly. It's not specifically stated that it was Beau DeMayo, but seemingly clapped back about, you know, the statements that he had made about some Witcher's writers not knowing the source material. Matt D'Ambrosio also said some things which were very crazy accusations just about how apparently Beau DeMayo had talked about how like bisexuality is a trope, and had said that, you know, the way that he views bottoms is like really messed up, and also like that he is totally cool with killing off like queer characters and he's super for that. But we also have to keep in mind that Matt D'Ambrosio was saying this probably also in response to like hate that he was getting. So like I said, it is still kind of a clap back. Maybe. I'm not saying that it's not true or that it's not based on his own experiences and it's truthful. It could very well be. But one, it's not specified that it's Beau DeMayo, and two, it's also like we have to consider the fact that clearly these two people maybe were feuding. So anything they say about each other is going to maybe come from a place of them not liking each other and seeing maybe each other as not being great. That's all I wanted to say about that. But if this is true, it's terrible. It is awful. Like, I'm not going to deny that. I just feel like this is the only real receipts that I've seen about him potentially saying things that are like gross and like being abusive. And everyone else just seems to say, I've heard from people that he's like this, but I don't have a lot of like receipts and sources, which is why I'm a little bit hesitant to fully jump into that camp. I would like more evidence is what I would like. There have also been receipts that people clipped of him talking about Sunspot, and like I said, I kind of mentioned the whole whitewashing thing previously. And once again, to clarify, that is in terms of the voice actor that they chose, who is also Brazilian, and Sunspot is also Brazilian, but the actor that they chose was not Afro-Brazilian. To be also clear, Sunspot is mixed. His dad is Afro-Brazilian, his mom is white. So that is a whole thing. People had receipts on that. And people also talked about how he might be misogynistic on Reddit. People were talking about his discussion about Emma Frost and how he doesn't like Emma for Scott is misogynistic, which I gotta say, I read the tweets and it doesn't seem misogynistic to me. In terms of the OF angle and that he was fired for that, I really don't think it's that still, just because the OF had been around since 2022. It was free, it was non-explicit. Marvel probably knew about it for sure. Like, they gotta have known about it. I'm gonna say, I'm 99% sure that they knew about it. So they were clearly fine with it if they hired him. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is the Beau DeMayo Twitter account that I had talked about before in my previous video was removed. It has been suspended. So clearly, I don't think that was Beau DeMayo. I think that was somebody impersonating him. So just keep in mind that I don't think that's legit. Beau DeMayo is back on Instagram, but he has pretty much scrubbed so much of his Instagram. Like, there's like 9 posts. So that's telling. But what it says, I'm still not sure because I don't know what happened. Also, how has Marvel not released a statement? This is wild. I hope we get a statement. I hope it happens at some point. I can't wait to see the series. I think it will be very good. And I think the plus side is that the premiere did happen, and just in terms of the show as it stands, as its own thing, people have been saying really good things about it. So I'm hoping that it's good. And season 1 and season 2 are good, and that we get a season 3, and that the season 3 is good. I think that's all I have to say about this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too chaotic, but my mind is in so many places because this is chaotic. Like, what is happening? Remember, friends, if you are checking out anything on this issue, please, please, please just make sure that you consider the context of anyone that's speaking and why they might be saying what they're saying. Be informed as you consume any news and any media. It is very important to me that you do that. Also, I now realize that my beads have been in the background of this video, my Orbeez. I have these for ASMR content, and I still haven't used them yet, but one day. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts, and if you do have any other information that you want to share, or any receipts that you find, or anything like that, please do share with me in the comments. I love sort of just reading up on stuff and getting more informed. I will put links to everything I've mentioned here in the video description, so if you want to read articles, things like that, please check it out yourself and make your own informed decisions and thoughts. Thanks for watching, and until next time, friends, stay nerdy.